With James Harden officially getting traded to the Philadelphia 76ers, I think the big three of Harden, Kyrie, and KD officially goes down as one of the biggest what-ifs in NBA history. Hey, my name is Gene, and I'd love to come on here and give you guys my opinion on what I see in the NBA. I'm a long-term basketball fan, and if you guys like anything in this video, make sure you give me a like and hit the subscribe button for upcoming videos. I think to look at this Brooklyn Nets team, you have to go back to how this team was even assembled. We got to flash back to the 2018-2019 season where Kevin Durant's still on the Golden State Warriors. Now, famously, everyone knows Kevin Durant went to the Warriors after losing them 3-1. And after winning 2 championships in 4 years, he left. But I mean, that year, it was kind of rumored all season that this might be a guy that is looking to leave. And a lot of implications pointed to New York and not Brooklyn, the Knicks. The game that really started fueling the narrative of, hey, Kevin Durant actually might leave this season was the game versus the Clippers. Now, the game was tied at 106 with 10 seconds left. Draymond Green gets this rebound, and you can see Kevin Durant clapping for the ball, clapping very hard like he wants the ball, he wants game-winning shot. This is a guy who's been proven. He does usually take this shot, him or Curry for the team. Draymond ignores him clapping and dribbles all the way up the court and ends up falling over and turning the basketball over, and the game ends up going into overtime. What happened on the bench was the real key factor in this. You can see Kevin Durant obviously frustrated with Draymond Green that he did not get the ball. He goes over there to voice his concern, and Draymond just doesn't seem like he wants to hear any of it. After that game, Draymond Green would be suspended by the team for a night, and they end up losing their next 4 games. And Draymond kind of took it as a shot at him, like, hey, I've been here a long time, and you guys are taking his side over mine. A lot of people were starting to speculate, will this be Draymond Green's last year with the Golden State Warriors also? Regardless of the dysfunction in the locker room, this team, how talented and how skilled they were able to make it all the way to the NBA Finals, where they were dealing with some injuries all year. Kevin Durant had this most of the playoffs with a calf injury, and they were down 3-1 against the extremely hot Kawhi Leonard-led Toronto Raptors. Down 3-1, and in Game 5 against Toronto, Kevin was kind of rumored that, hey, he might play. They might have him play tonight, and they need a win. And he did. And he looked great. And in 12 minutes, he had 11 points. We're like, Kevin Durant's back. He will win this finals for this team, and the Golden State Warriors will probably repeat. Kevin Durant ends up going down with an Achilles injury in the first half, and the speculation started of, was he rushed back by the team? Should he even came back? Why did they play KD? Why did he go out there? Was the team rushing him back because they wanted to win and not looking at for the best health of Kevin Durant? My personal opinion, I do think Kevin Durant rushed back. I don't want to blame it all on Golden State. I think that he had a lot of say in it, but I think that he was definitely pushed by Golden State to, hey, like, we need to win. We kind of need you. And I think that kind of influenced his decision on playing. I don't think he should have came back, but that's easier to say after everything went down. What do you guys think in the comments? Do you guys think they rushed him back? Should he have played? Should he not have played? Everyone says that they rushed him back, but I want to know what you guys think in the comments. Golden State ends up going on to lose that series. Klay Thompson also tears his ACL in that series, and 20 days later, Kevin Durant leaves for Brooklyn, and he's on the Nets. But he would not go to the Nets alone. He's joined by his good friend Kyrie Irving, who was also going through his own struggle in Boston. Now, Kyrie's journey is a little bit different than Kevin Durant's, as he had came off winning a championship with LeBron James and decided that he wanted to have his own identity, his own team, and he took shift. He left after losing to Kevin Durant in the Warriors in the finals and went over to Boston. And in Boston, his tenure there, he just never seemed like he found his feet. His first year, his team went to the Eastern Conference Finals, but he was hurt for most of it. And rookie Jason Tatum and second-year player Jaylen Brown had a spectacular playoff run. The next year looked promising. Gordon Hayward was coming back for this team. They had the 2 young guys in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and Kyrie Irving was supposed to come back, and he was rumored that he was going to be there. He told the crowd, I will be back next year. Early in the season, everything shook up for Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving is a very family-oriented guy, and early in the season, his grandfather that he's had a very close connection with had passed away. And he blamed himself for not able to see his grandfather before the passing because he was in Boston and not Brooklyn. That basketball got in the way of this. Basketball went on a back burner after that happened. That was the second thought. The first thing was family for him, and basketball he didn't really care about. He wanted to be home. So when it came time to resign, Kyrie Irving being from New York, it was a no-brainer for him to go to Brooklyn, especially with a good friend of his, Kevin Durant, giving him a call, say, hey man, I'm thinking about going over to Brooklyn. How about you join? And the two were able to join forces over in Brooklyn. When it came time to resign, Kyrie had a lot of love for Boston. He wanted to be there, but he knew he needed to be close to Brooklyn. And it happened to fall in the same year that Kevin Durant had made a decision that he was going to go to Brooklyn, and they were able to go together. Halfway through that year, the team is clicking, dealing with some injuries here and there, but they're looking like a legit contender and a lot of people's final favorites, probably the best team in the East at the time. Now comes the third guy, James Harden. James Harden had a whole different journey than these guys. James Harden and Kevin Durant actually played together back in their younger days in OKC. But Harden was famous for being the guy that scored 35 points every night on a undermanned Houston team. He was playing with a 6'6" guy at center. He was never able to get over the hump and wanted that chance at getting a ring. So he did what anyone would do. He wanted out. Now, Harden's last year with Houston was unlike KD's and Kyrie's, where you can visually see that this guy did not want to be there. He showed up to training camp late by going to his boyfriend's concert, aka Lil Baby, and giving him massive gifts, and then going to Vegas the next day, and then finally showing up for training camp. With all of this going on during the pandemic, he had to miss even more time because of quarantine. And then became the infamous fat suit. He came out of training camp looking a little overweight. He looked a little slow, and I mean, you just look at the photos. This didn't look like the same guy we saw last year, and he didn't perform like the same guy we saw last year. Then it started to come out that, hey, this guy doesn't want to be here. He's out of shape. Houston was like, all right, let's move him. And they did. They moved him to Brooklyn, right, with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. I mean, these are three guys who were top 5 offensive players in the NBA. Kevin Durant being probably the number 1 scorer in the league. James Harden being top 2, and Kyrie Irving being one of the greatest finishers at a guard we've ever seen. And miraculously, when Harden got to Brooklyn, he looked amazing, and he was no longer fat. He was skinny as shit. But look at those photos, the before and afters. He looked great. And the team looked great. And they were clicking. And then injuries happened. This team had probably some of the highest expectations you could think of from any team. I mean, you have 3 guys who are elite scorers. I mean, top tier. You aren't going to find better scorers than these guys in the world. 2 MVPs. And a guy who put a dagger in Steph Curry's heart in Game 7. All these guys to take over game any given night. All these guys hit a clutch shot. And all these guys' bags were miraculous. They were deep bags. There was not a defense that could stop this team. Now, we got to see them play one playoff series together. It was against Boston, where they 4-1 Boston. And the big 3 looked great every night. The only night they lost was a crazy game from Jason Tatum, who had a 50-point showing, his best showing of his career. But other than that, Brooklyn looked dominant every night. But after that series, they had Milwaukee next. And Harden had got hurt in Game 1, came back later in the series. Kyrie had got hurt in Game 4 and missed the back end of the series. And when Harden came back, he was a little rushed. He was a little slow. He wasn't all the way Harden. So it was a half of Harden and Kevin Durant versus this juggernaut of a Milwaukee Bucks team. And Kevin Durant almost did it. Game 7, he was a shoe size away from getting to the conference finals. I mean, he was literally this close. He hit the shot, but he was on the 2-point line. So it's almost like, okay, if his shoe was a little bit smaller, foot back, does this team win the championship? Does Kyrie, Harden, they get some time to get healthy? They go on, they beat that Atlanta team, or do they beat Phoenix? Like, does Harden have a championship after this? Then came the 2021-2022 season. Still dealing with COVID, early issues happened with Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving was a guy who's very strong in faith, and he's not a guy you're going to push around. Let's just be honest. Everyone knows Kyrie Irving thinks the way he thinks, and he doesn't give a fuck. Anyone cares the way he thinks. Playing in New York, one of the highly regulated states, they passed a law, them in California, that any professional player at a home team cannot play home games, which means they can still play road games in opposing cities and states, but they are not allowed to play at home. Kyrie says, no, I'm not going to take the vaccine. I don't care if I only play road games. I will not get this vaccine. Brooklyn took this and said, okay, do we take a halftime player? We get him half the nights, or do we take a full-time? Brooklyn made a decision early. Hey, we're not going to play this guy at all. Until he gets the vaccine, our regulations change. We're not playing Kyrie Irving. We did not think we were going to see Kyrie Irving at all this season, but COVID was also a blessing for him, as a lot of the league had missed a lot of players. Big COVID outbreak in the season where everyone was signing 10 days. Every player was getting a 10-day seem like, and the Nets needed players, and they had a superstar sitting on the bench. And they're like, all right, Kyrie, you're a part-time player now. While Kyrie is out, Kevin Durant is having one of the best years of his career. This guy looked like he didn't miss a beat. After almost being honest last year by a shoe step, he looked mad, and he was on a tear. He was leading the league in points, and he was everyone's favorite, honestly, for MVP before his injury. And then he had Harden. Harden came into the season. He looked a little slow, probably the worst we've seen him. And the infamous fat suit seemed to have returned. He was looking a little bit bigger. He had a game where he had 4 points. And people were starting to question, like, yo, what happened to James Harden? Like, is he washed now? Is like, what's up with him? And he turned it on for a little bit. And we're like, okay. And we got one game. We got a game for all they all play together. They played 17 minutes together this year. 17 minutes. And they look great. And then KD got hurt. And then Harden got hurt. And then it was just Kyrie. Part-time. And they end up going on an 11-game losing streak. And during this losing streak, we start really hearing Harden wants out. Trade deadline's coming up, Harden wants out. Harden doesn't feel like he fits into his team, blah, blah, blah. All the articles that are even more going to be pushed out after this video comes out. But it was clear he wasn't happy. So Brooklyn took the opportunity and they traded him away, leaving possibly the biggest what if in NBA history. If there's not a bigger what if, please tell me what you guys think is a bigger what if, because to my opinion, it's the biggest what if in NBA history. You have 3 legit guys you could argue are top 25 scorers all time. 2 of you could probably argue that are top 10 scorers of all time. 3 guys in the primes of their career gave you 16 games together. And in those 16 games, they were 13-3. 13-3. And the 3 losses came from 3 spectacular performances. 2 of them come from Colin Sexton, and 1 of them come from Jason Tatum. Guys having to go over and beyond just to outscore them. 16 games you got out of this in a season and a half. This isn't Brooklyn's first Big 3 failure, though. This one is right up there next to them. Just based on the caliber of players that they had on their team, with Blake Griffin, with Bruce Bowen, with Cam Thomas, with Joe Harris, with Spencer Dinwiddie, with Karis LeVert. This was a extremely stacked team. And to only get 16 games out of them, this got to be probably one of the biggest failures for Big 3 ever. And the biggest what if. If Kyrie and Harden were 100%, do they win the finals last year? Do they beat Giannis? It's kind of a shame we never got to see this team's full potential. Like, it was like a team with such untapped potential. I think the closest we'll ever see was that first round matchup against Boston. I think that's the best we'll ever get to see, the most we'll ever get to see from that Big 3. It's such a big what if. It's like, was there a defense out there that was going to ever be good enough to stop them? If this team stayed together and were healthy, was there ever going to be a team that was able to beat these 3? I mean, you can't outscore that. How do you outscore them? How do you stop that? You can't double team any of them. They're all great passers. They're all elite passers. You can't double. You can't trap. This team on paper, one of the scariest teams we'll ever see put together, and only get 16 games out of them. To me, it's just the biggest what if ever. Like, there's so many questions and so many scenarios, what could have happened, what should have happened, that we'll never know. And we're just left with the biggest what if in NBA history. If you guys like this video and you want more what ifs, narratives, or even just want to hear my take, make sure you guys subscribe and comment below. I'm trying to give you guys at least 2 videos a week. Right now I'm doing 1. I'm going to try to get 2 a week, but these videos take a while. I'll put a lot of time and effort in this one, so a like would be much appreciated.